Hello, everyone. Welcome to tonight's session of Unplugged with Ross. My name is Roslyn Miner, and it's always a pleasure to have you here. Tonight, we will be having a very interesting discussion managing with empathy, managing, leading people, not teams. Tonight, I'm joined by my very good friend, Joyce Kaduki. Joyce is the founder and director of Primal Strategy Limited. She is also a founding partner at Maxwell Leadership Certified Team. She's also a certified coach, speaker, and trainer. Today, she will be guiding this discussion of managing with empathy, leading humans, not just teams. And I'm very excited about this discussion because empathy is critical in our day to day lives, be it from a personal perspective or in the workplace. To start us off, as per norm, I will share some key statistics and facts on empathetic leadership. When it comes to work life balance, 86% of employees with highly empathetic senior leaders reported better ability to balance personal and professional obligations. When it comes to retention and loyalty, a Business Solver study found that 95% of employees are more likely to stay with an organization that empathizes with their needs. On matters performance and productivity, empathy from leaders is linked with reduced burnout, improved mental health, and higher morale. Interestingly, when it comes to creativity and innovation, 61% of a Catalyst study done in the US of 900 employees, 61% of the employees gave feedback that empathetic senior leaders, where they have empathetic senior leaders, they felt more creative compared to only 13% with less empathetic leaders. So, as you can see, empathy is not just a soft skill, it's not just a buzzword, it's something that is critical in our day to day. And to guide us with this discussion, I welcome Joyce Kaduki. Karibu sana, Joyce.
Thank you very much, Roslyn, and I appreciate you inviting me to this conversation with your community, talking about empathy. And we'll talk about what it is, what are the benefits, but already from the statistics that you have highlighted, you have given us a glimpse into the fact that empathy is not just a nice to have skill as what was initially thought, but there is a business case for empathy. Before I even talk about the definition, what is empathy all about, I find it helpful to paint a picture of what it could look like in real life. And my mind goes back to a conversation that I had with one of my clients, an executive. And he told me about one of his team members who had been a high performer. This was a young man who was doing very well. But then, over a period of time, he noticed that this initially top performer had started coming to work late, his performance had declined, and sometimes there would even be smell of alcohol in his breath. So he was coming to work having consumed alcohol and sometimes being drunk. There are different things that this executive could have done. Issued a warning to the employee, possibly lit a fire under this young man's feet, like what we know happened some years back, the generations that we are coming from, especially when we talk about the baby boomers and the Gen Z, Generation X, where you held onto your work for dear life. And so it was easy for your boss to threaten you and to tell you to pull up your socks. And it worked at that time. So there are several things that this boss or this executive could have done. But he told me that what he did was to take this young man aside and have a chat with him. And in that conversation, the executive found that this young man was facing a situation where his mother was unwell, so she had been diagnosed with a chronic illness. And the young man was responsible for taking care of his single mother. He was also taking care of his sister, and this was taking a toll on him. Now, unfortunately, rather than deal with this in a positive way, he had then turned to taking alcohol, to taking drink to try and just drown himself in this and not have to face this fact. Thankfully, because this executive had a conversation with this young man, then they were able to work out a plan where the young man was supported, and therefore the organization paid for the young man to have a counselor support the gentleman. And when we were having this conversation, the executive told me that this young man's performance had since improved, and much as the home situation had not changed. So he was still taking care of his terminally ill mother, he was still taking care of his sister, but his performance had improved, and even the way that he showed up to work had changed. And this then takes me to my definition of, or one of the definitions, because again, think about empathy, and there are many different definitions. But empathy is really the ability to put yourself in someone else's shoe, to understand things from their point of view. So it's not just looking at things from your own lens or from your own perspective, but you're looking at the other person's perspective. You try and feel what they're feeling. Much as, of course, you cannot be 100%, but you are looking at things from their point of view. It has also been said to be seeing things from the other person's eyes. It has been said to be hearing what they hear, and therefore leading with empathy, managing with empathy is not just looking at a person as a resource that is there to produce. Yes, of course, there's that aspect, but going beyond and realizing that for this person to perform, there's a whole makeup, there are emotions involved, there are feelings involved, and this person will not always be at their best. And even when they're not at their best, rather than then lashing out at them, and of course, it is true they are there to perform, but getting to understand what might be going on with this person's either emotions, what might be going on in their lives, and it could be something very personal, but then it's affecting the way that they're showing up at work. So I hope, Rosalind, that gives a glimpse into what empathy is all about.
I couldn't agree more, Joyce. And interestingly, the example you just provided is pretty much like a copy paste of something I have experienced in my HR career. And yes, it was an employee dealing with, a sick relative. And sometimes we fail to understand or to actually see that when people come to the office, they actually don't stop being human. What happens in their personal lives, it's part and parcel of it. And I appreciate, the old generations, the boomers, the Xers will say, leave your problems at the door. But sometimes it's very hard when either you're dealing with a chronic condition yourself, or whatever, serious eventuality is in that individual's life. You cannot demarcate that they are part and parcel of what that person is, or it's a makeup of who they are. So yes, I totally agree with, the example that you provided, and the need to see through someone else's eyes, and not just be very myopic about, someone's performance, someone's the way they are showing up. So let's take this conversation further, and if I may throw a question at you, sometimes people may think that empathy is a sign of weakness. So, how do we separate genuine empathy from being soft or being seen as weak?
You are right that sometimes people think that empathy is a sign of weakness, and this is one of the myths of empathy, about empathy, that when you're showing empathy, what you're doing is allowing people to not show up, not to produce, not to deliver results. But really, what you're doing is allowing people to show up as humans. As the title of this webinar rightly says, you're managing humans, not just teams.
Yeah.
And put an extension to that, not machines, not equipment. Because when you're dealing with an equipment or some machine, you program it and your outcome is pretty much predictable, whatever output you'll get from that. But someone has said people are people, and they need to be treated as people. Sometimes in the extreme, someone will be sick, someone will be hungry, someone will be tired, someone will be lonely. And the way they show up will be very different for them from day to day, and will not necessarily be conducive to their being able to deliver at their best. And when I think about the question that you asked about this being seen as a sign of weakness, I think back to my working life before I got into the space of coaching. There's a boss I had once, and this boss, I remember, as not just once but several times, this boss would invite my colleagues and I to his home, and his wife would make a meal for us over lunch. And beyond the meal, sometimes he would just sit with us and have conversations with us, get to know our names, ask about the names of our spouses and our children, and he would remember. He would remember our names. And somewhere down the line, like if you had told this boss that your child was about to start school, he would come back and ask about what that experience was like. You would imagine that because this boss then had this friendly conversations and invited us to his home to meet his family, that then there would be lacks in terms of performance. But this boss, just because you sat and talked about your child that was starting school or about your spouse who had traveled and had just come back, when there was a deadline to be met, then you made sure that if it meant working late into the night or coming to work over the weekend, you went that extra mile to meet that deadline. Why? Because if you did not deliver as was expected, as had been agreed, then there would be consequences. And beyond that, what also happened was that because of the way that we felt that he really treated us as humans, and he saw us first before he looked at what we could deliver. What I found used to happen many of the times is that my colleagues and I would even go the extra mile. There's a time we worked when budgets were tight, and there was sometimes tight deadlines when the organization could not even afford to pay us overtime. But we still gave over and above what we were paid to do. Why? Because again, this boss had connected with us at a personal level, recognized us, and there was that extra bit, which in some circles is referred to as discretionary effort. We could have held back, but we still gave it because we felt we wanted to go the extra mile. And therefore, empathy is not about being weak, It's not about not having employees or staff deliver on their jobs, but it's about managing that side of the equation, the people side, so that then the results are not compromised. And when you take care of your people, there are so many studies that have been done. Leading associations and organizations like Gallup and Harvard Business Review, Center for Creative Leadership, and their statistics about how when people are treated as humans and when they are not just seen as machines or just as resources there to perform a job, which is an important element, yes. But when that bit is taken care of, then they deliver results. And what then happens is that even the bottom line of the organization, when you talk about the profit or the loss, it is impacted in a positive way. And therefore, being empathetic is not, it's not soft or weak, but it is something that it's an investment in your people that ultimately pays dividends.
I couldn't agree more, Joyce. I absolutely couldn't agree more. When people see that they are being seen, not just as another digit in the P&L, when they're seen, when they feel seen, when they feel heard, when they feel that they have a safe space within the workspace, in this particular, example, they will be, I mean, when it comes to delivering the results, it's second nature because they feel that you have their back and they also have your back. And I am really loving the comments that are coming through. Thank you, John, for sharing that it's a great conversation to have. And yes, I couldn't agree more. Asha, thank you for sharing your feedback. You've been very lucky to have a boss like that, who, after even meeting many years later, will ask you about family. And I think it actually makes someone feel that you're not just my boss. You are someone that I can reach out to. I can express myself. So without further ado, let's continue, Joyce.
All right. Thank you, Rosaline. And yes, there's that element then of seeing people not just as a resource that is there to deliver results, but is is a resource that has feelings, a resource that cannot be programmed and needs to be allowed to show up, as humans. And there's many different things that leaders can do in the workplace to build their empathetic muscle. And the great thing is that empathy is a skill and therefore it's a learnable skill, which means that even if there are some people, and yes, there are some who are naturally wired to have a heart for people and to care for people, to listen to people. Not everyone has that. But even those people for who, even those leaders for who this does not come naturally, the great thing is that because it is a skill, it is something that can be learned. And one of the ways is even having a conversation like this, where you're raising awareness. Someone thinks about what their workplace is like, what the culture in their office is like, or even in the business that they're running, because some of your community members would be running their own businesses. And they realize that things can be better. Why? Because the awareness has been raised. Part of the element of building empathetic, these empathetic skills or building this muscle is about training. Training in the sense that when someone gets to know that, yes, the workplace can be better or the business can be better, and then asking the question, okay, then what do I need to do? And there are even assessments. There are assessments for checking just how empathetic are you as a leader. And when you realize that you have room to grow, and I believe, Rosaline, we all have, no matter how well we are doing, there's always room for growth. We can do better. And so
Absolutely.
yes, when you realize that, then ask yourself, what else can I do? There are many things that are put forward in terms of growing your empathetic muscles, if I may refer to them as that. This one of this is learning to be a better listener. There's a quote that I love, which is by Steve Covey in his book Seven Habits of Highly Effective People, and it's about listening to understand. So I know I'm paraphrasing it here, but you're seeking to, oh, it's about seeking. Yes, the word is used to seek to understand first. So you seek to understand people, and of course, by in seeking to understand, it means that you're listening to people. It means that you're asking questions. You're not just making assumptions, but you're asking questions. And when you ask questions, then you tune in and you really listen, not because you want to respond or hit back to what people are saying, or to manipulate when you have heard the other person's story, but you really want to understand them and where they are coming from, where they are at. And in that way, then it's also a way of building your empathy muscles and becoming a better leader in that space. As you listen and make sure, again, you're not listening, you're not like a boss that one of my friends told me about. So she worked with this leader who used to ask them a lot of questions and ask for suggestions and ask for their feedback, and they were very quick to share their thoughts and to tell this boss what they thought. But somewhere along the line, they noticed a pattern, that the information that they shared with this boss after the boss had asked for their feedback would later be used against them in a meeting or even in other conversations. And your guess is as good as mine what happened after that. When this post then later, well, continued, because they would still continued coming to this friend of mine and her colleagues to ask for feedback and for input. But now they had learned the lesson the hard way, and they were no longer that forthright in terms of giving suggestions or even feedback. And therefore, just to circle back to the point that you're listening and asking questions, not to use this information against your team members or not to manipulate them, but to use that to then respond in a manner that is appropriate, in a manner that will make your team members feel that they are heard. It doesn't necessarily mean that you do everything that they tell you. That's a whole different conversation. But you making it clear that yes, you have listened, yes, you have heard, yes, you have considered. Sometimes your course of action will be different, but you have understood what they have said and you have come down to where they are. I hope this is making sense.
Oh, it is. It is. And I think, what you've mentioned about, managers or leaders seeking feedback from their teams and then using it against them is actually most often used, or one of the scenarios that come about is especially in performance management.
Mhm.
So instead of you taking that feedback and analyzing what are they trying to say, what can we improve, what can we do better, you will find that the same leader can decide, because maybe certain targets haven't been met, they can manipulate your feedback and make it seem that you're the one who's not performing, you're the one who is not, delivering on your mandate. Yet they are also failing in their role as a leader, but because they are not at a place of maturity to actually understand the what the message is, not as an attack to their leadership, not as passing the buck. I think we can do better when it comes to performance management, when it comes to employee relations, when it comes to one-to-one discussions. They really don't have to be toxic. Someone doesn't have to come to the meeting all gathered up because they know you're just out to fish for information that you will use against them or against the team. It is not, one-to-ones are not sessions for you to get what is cooking in the grapevine. One-to-one discussions is to see how can I support you better. So as people, anyone who is in, a managerial position or a leadership position, need to be very keen not to be that toxic boss. And I think we need to appreciate the Gen Zs because they are very clear about if we do not have empathy in your, in your leadership style, then as they say, you're giving toxic, you know, you're giving narcissistic behavior. So we really need to change our way of thinking and our way of leading, and I totally agree with what you're saying. And now it will bring me to a question where how can managers practice empathy in day to day interactions without overextending themselves? Because someone may confuse empathy as you going all out for your team. It has boundaries. So, how can this leader, this manager, this colleague practice empathy without overextending themselves?
I love that question. Well, even the ones before that. And the reason is because you help me then bring out another aspect of empathy. And this is about exercising empathy towards yourself first. There's the popular phrase that you cannot pour from an empty cup. And therefore, if you're running on empty, then it's going to be very difficult to be truly, genuinely empathetic for a sustainable period of time. Again, there's that phrase, sustainable empathy. Because if you're empty and you try to meet the needs of others, you're listening to them and you're always, and depending on how many team members you have and what the needs are, and if they are constantly coming to you and you're the one having to respond to all that, there's only so much that you can do and give as a human being. And therefore, for you to be in a position to respond appropriately and not to get to a point where you start feeling resentment towards your team members, wondering why are they so needy? Why can't they shape up and take care of themselves? Then it is important to first take care of yourself. Take time out. And there are sometimes you will not be in a position to have that conversation. Yes, you will notice one of your team members is struggling. Now, don't have that conversation when you yourself are also struggling. Give yourself space to recharge, to connect with yourself, and to take care of yourself before you try meet the needs of others. If you don't, then like I mentioned, you run the risk of getting resentful. You run the risk of facing burnout because there's only so much that you can do. And there's also the risk of responding in a way that is not appropriate and will not help the other person. So, really taking care of yourself first. Many of us, and I imagine your community, have all, well, will remember and be able to relate to the announcement that is given when you get onto an aeroplane and you're told if the yeah if the what is it the pressure comes down and the oxygen masks are dropped. If you're traveling with someone, you put the mask on yourself first before you help the person traveling with you. And why is this? Because, of course, if you don't do that, then in the process of trying to help the other person, you could pass out. And that will mean you will not have helped them, and you will not have helped yourself. And so take care of yourself before attempting to help others. And learn to recognize the warning signals when you feel you're running on empty, when you feel that you need a recharge, so that you ensure that those boundaries that you put in place then serve to also protect you, even as you take care of your team members. So it's a two-way street where you take care of yourself, and then you go out and take care of your team. And I believe also, even if you're the team leader, because again, the place of empathy is not just for the boss or the leader, but it's for everyone in the organization. Of course, as the director, as the manager, as the business owner, you set the tone where when those that you're leading see you being empathetic towards yourself and taking care of yourself before you take care of others, they will do the same. But they will also learn how to extend empathy to others. And therefore, just making sure again you take care of yourself before you take care of others. And there's a bit I also want to add before I hand over back to you. Remember the story I mentioned about this executive who told me about the young man who worked for him and the performance had slipped. And what this executive did is he did not try to solve the problem himself. He recognized that this is a situation that needs professional intervention. And therefore, even when we talk about empathy, it's not about you coming up with the solutions for your team members. It's not about you being the answer man or the answer woman to every challenge that is brought to you. But sometimes it's just providing a listening ear. Sometimes it's just being a sounding board. But other times, it's also engaging professional help outside of the organization, or even if it's within the organization, but you're engaging help where it's going to be the right kind of help. I hope that answers your question.
No, absolutely. And I'll first read a comment that has come through from Helen, where she says, leading with empathy is vital because it fosters trust and collaboration, ensuring that works get done more effectively. And that's very true because empathy is not just limited to leadership. Everyone in the workspace must conduct themselves with empathy. And that now leads me, as a build up to that comment, it leads me to the next question, which is what role does empathy play when giving tough feedback or driving performance? If I borrow from what Helena said, it's vital because it's fostering that trust and collaboration. But then, you know, just because you're an empathetic leader doesn't mean that you will be exempt from having difficult conversations. So, how can we use empathy as a key skill in having difficult conversations? Because actually, recently I actually saw a pin, and if I may read it, it spoke about if you think having uncomfortable conversations is hard, wait until you see the results of not having them.
Mhm.
I'll repeat. If you think having uncomfortable conversations is hard, wait until you see the results of not having them. So, in light of that, now we are talking about empathy. How can we use this key skill to actually have difficult conversations in a very candid way that is not going to burn bridges, but it's going to drive the point home, and everyone will walk away going, aha, I needed to hear that.
Mhm. Mhm. Before I respond to that question, let me also uh, just touch on that comment from Helen. And I do agree that empathy builds trust on a team. It builds well, it promotes or improves collaboration, because when people feel cared for and they know that it is genuine care, it's not that whatever they're putting out there will be used against them, then they, I mean, it's genuinely a place where it's a place where you, I mean, even as a human being, as an individual, you feel you want to work, and you show up with your best, and you collaborate better. In fact, some of the benefits that have been given again through studies and upon studies of empathetic leadership is that empathy fosters innovation, it improves collaboration, it improves morale on teams, because again people feel genuinely cared for, and they know that yes, it's not just about their performance, but it's also about their whole person, and it also promotes engagement, and so there's a whole business case for empathy. But back to this tough conversations question. One of the myths about empathy is that it takes away from accountability. That again, it's just a soft thing where you become lax and allow, because you're promoting relationships and well-being, that you allow performance to sleep and you don't give attention to performance. But empathy and those tough conversations and accountability are like two sides of the same coin. You cannot have one without the other, or if you do, well, you could, but then your leadership is not going to be effective. What do I mean by that? If you have a workplace where you're promoting well-being, you're promoting connections, and you're really taking care of people, and it just feels like one big party and a place where just people come and have fun, and it's just the positive side of caring for people, but you do not have the holding people accountable, holding people to the results that are expected and the deliverables that have been agreed, then you risk either the organization grinding to a halt or not having an organization at all. And so it's finding that delicate balance. And sometimes it's almost like a dance where you're moving from one to the other. So it's not performance, 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 and accountability. The other extreme is it's not just about care and well being and having those nice conversations and connecting with people, but it's about at times going a bit much in terms of like if there are tight deadlines and there's a job that needs to be delivered, then that's not the time to sit around and have conversations about how someone is. At that time they might be stressed, but there are sometimes you have to, that turn that knob a bit higher and drive people. But even when you're driving people, they know that you care for them. I want to refer this book. I hope you can see. This is
Yeah.
21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership by John Maxwell.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the laws in this book is the law of connection. And what the law of connection says is that people touch a heart before they ask for a hand. What does that mean? It's about building connections. But just because you have built connections with those that you're working with does not mean that now you stop caring about performance, you stop caring about results, stop asking about the numbers, stop asking about the targets. It doesn't. It's about having connected with people, even when those tough conversations are held, and you must have those tough conversations when people are not delivering, when they're not shaping up, when they're not showing up as they should, you absolutely need to have those tough conversations. And even as you have those conversations with them, they know you are doing it out of love and care for them. And part of that caring is holding people to account, not allowing them to sleep on their performance and not deliver on their jobs. So back to the point is there are two sides of the same coin. You need the care and connection, but you also need those tough conversations.
Brilliant.
Otherwise, yes, yes, over to you.
Actually, I am going to build from what you have shared. There's a comment that has come through. Empathy is also the new buzzword, and we hear it almost everywhere. But sometimes one can feel that it is not genuine. What is your take on that? And how can we differentiate between fake and genuine? Borrowing from what you said earlier, an example you provided of a leader that would take input from their team. To his team, they think that my line manager is usually open to feedback. He or she is always, seeking ways to improve. However, the feedback you provide is then used against you. Now that is fake empathy. So how can we differentiate genuine from fake? And most importantly, how can we ensure that the interactions that we are having with other people are, you're doing it with with genuinity. It's you're genuine about it, and you do not have untoward intentions. So how do we differentiate fake from genuine?
What I would say to that is empathy stands the test of time. You may not be able to tell what care or what, reach out for concern or expression of concern is what is genuine or not from, say, a single conversation or from one incident. But over a period of time, then you're able to see, and I believe as humans, there's a way over a period of time, you're able to see whether this is, if say if it's a manager that you're dealing with or a supervisor, and they're carrying one moment, but then they are so unpredictable that you can never tell what you expect from them. Then, of course, as a team member, you have cause to be a bit wary and to question whether this team leader or this boss or manager is being genuine. And therefore, what I would do is subject it to the test of time. And of course, there's also listening to what's going on the ground, because you might think, oh, my leader is extremely caring and they show a lot of concern, but everyone else around you do not see things the same way that you see them. And there's always the opportunity to then reevaluate your views about this team leader before then burning your fingers or finding that what you thought was genuine empathy was you being used, or the team leader then just gaining information and not not something that is genuine. And therefore what I'd say is subjected to time, and of course then also, even as you put yourself out there, there's sometimes, I know the Gen Zs have this terminology of oversharing or putting too much out there. Then you also do not want to overshare or overexpose yourself initially. So allow that trust to be built over time, so that again you don't put yourself out there and then you start regretting when you have opened yourself out and made yourself too vulnerable. And of course, even the leader themselves, if they're only expecting you to open up about what's going on in your space, but you don't see that is not being reciprocated, so you don't see the same from your leader. Again, there would be room to maybe just to put some brakes and go a bit slow before you open yourself and start wishing that you had not put too much of yourself out there. So there are different things that someone can do.
No, absolutely. And I think where you find yourself that your leader is not genuine, your leader is having fake empathy, I think it actually directs you to the kind of character they are. It will actually put a really big beam of light into their poor character, into their lack of integrity, because you cannot be two-faced and expect that people will not see through the lies. And as you've correctly said, when you put it to the test of time, you may think initially you're actually, getting it all and you are playing people for fools, but something you will actually start sleeping and people will become wiser, and they will actually see whenever they express themselves, the result is X, and you will become their perfect specimen to, if we fail to share, what is the result. And the more you actually have that data, that trend, they will see through the fakeness. Now, if I may read this comment that has been shared here by Helen, this conversation is so timely because just yesterday I had an incident with someone I consider a mentor. The way they addressed me was so hurtful, and I couldn't help but feel they could have done better. It reminded me how important empathy is in leadership. Words can either build or break, and without empathy, even well intentioned feedback can wound. That is very true. That is very, very true. Something as simple as how you deliver a message, it could be your tone, it could be your attitude. It actually either puts in more weight to the message or makes it weaker in terms of delivery. And pole sana Helen in terms of the unfortunate communication, but it actually makes you see what Joyce you mentioned. If you're not guarding yourself as an individual, you're not going to deliver your best. Now, there are two ways to look about this situation: the delivery by the mentor being poor as expressed, or the mentor running low on their energies, everything around them. They're actually an empty cup, so you cannot drain in any further. And therefore, whatever is going to come from them is going to reflect indirectly what is going on in their life. Joyce, what do you have to say?
That is very true. And I want to just add a comment onto what Helen has said before I talk about what will show up in their lives, and say that when a leader, you as the team leader, because I'm assuming the people that we are talking to in this virtual room would be those team leaders, but they also have those that they report to. But you, as the team leader, then have a track record of showing empathy genuinely and that care, even when there's the occasional slip, because again, we are not perfect, and there's once in a while we'll say something that will hurt someone that we are coaching, someone we are mentoring, or someone who is our direct report. But even when that happens, they will know that it's a one of, maybe this person was angry. There's something that was not okay with them, or with my team leader or my mentor or coach. And in this instance, then it's almost like, when we talk about this being a two-way street, they'll give you the benefit of doubt because again, you have established a good track record. And so back to, yes, please ask that question again, Rosaline. I hope you don't mind.
Um, so the question, hold up. So in this, so I think the next question would be, unless it is to do with Helen's comment, just to be clear.
There was a I think a question that had either come in or,
Okay.
but it's okay. We can continue the conversation.
All
Yes.
right. Sorry.
Yes.
I think I got too much on. I think I was reviewing one of the questions in terms of cultural context.
Okay.
And in the African, so we're in a multi generational team:
Mhm.
boomers, Xers, millennials, Gen Zs. And we are also having very many cultural contexts. How does empathy bridge these differences? And also, to take it a notch higher, do cultural contexts shape how empathy is expressed or received? So, if I may, so for example, the boomers and the Gen Xers, when they were being brought up, if you're speaking to an elder person, it's yes, ma'am, yes, sir.
Mhm.
You come to the modern day workplace, you find yourself, you are not referring someone by their surname. So if I may take myself an example, it will not be Miss Minor. Someone will easily call me Rosalind and I will not feel offended. So in consideration of all these, different generations in the workplace, how can we use empathy to our benefit to bridge those gaps? You know, Gen Zs have a different way of communicating. I'm still catching up with the vibe. But how do we use empathy as a way to bridge these differences, and how it is expressed and received? Yeah.
Empathy is complex, and it will be different things in different situations. The example you've already given of the boomers and the Gen X's versus the millennials and the Gen Z's. For the boomers and the X's, many of them, or a good number of them, when they started working, it was about working in this one place for life, and therefore job security was an issue because the idea was to work and get your pension, which also meant that if your manager, your boss, if they did not treat you right, if the focus was on the numbers, or the productivity, the bottom line, you would just grind your teeth and just stick it out and just put your head down, try not to ruffle feathers, but do your job. The millennials, and especially also the Gen Zs, they will not take that. And they not only expect it, they demand it. And the way that you express that empathy varies not just culturally, but even in terms of gender. I'm thinking again, coming from the boomers and the Gen Zs, if a male showed empathy, this caring, this extending connection and building relationships, you would consider them weak, or at least they would be considered weak in some quarters. If a lady showed empathy, again, they would be dismissed that, oh, it's a very feminine thing, and people again think, oh, that's just yeah, women's stuff, and that it's again weak leadership. Maybe they don't even have a backbone. What you have to do is to check the context, check even the industry. because empathy could be as simple as sitting and having a conversation with someone, listening to them, listening to their point of view, getting to know what are their hopes, what are their dreams, what are they struggling with. So it is many things, that conversation. In other quarters, and I'm thinking, say, for example, I think about the tech industry. It may be allowing people to contribute ideas. There's an aspect of empathy in that, where it's not just you as the manager giving the answers and saying how things need to be done, but you're providing space. What you're doing is creating an environment where people are able to come in and make their contribution. They bring the solutions, they innovate, and they get things done. So yours is to create that environment. And so, yes, it shifts from one place to another. In some quarters, showing empathy, maybe sitting and having the eye contact and showing that, yes, I'm listening to you, and reading the body language and saying, oh, I noticed that even though you said you're okay, you seem tense, or you're looking sad. So you're reading the body language. And so empathy is, it's complex, and it's very many different things in different situations. Again, in some cultural contexts, it may be asking someone what is I mean, like one of the examples that we referred to earlier. If they, if no, we may not have referred to this, but if you know that that at one time they mentioned that they had a sick relative, a sick mother or a sick father, then finding out, oh, by the way, how is your dad or your mom, how are they doing? And really listening to that. And you're not even providing a solution, but just coming down and recognizing that this person is has a personal side to them before they even bring their solutions, their professional solutions to work. So there are very many layers to this, and you have to take the context into account. I imagine, I don't know the Japan. I'm just picking out, say, like the Japanese culture. I'm sure that what would be considered empathetic leadership there might be different in China, would be different in East Africa, would be different in the US or in the UK. So yes, it is important to get to understand the context of operation, so that, which is where then getting to seek to understand and to respond in an appropriate manner. Yes.
Very well said, very well put in terms of appreciating the diversity of thought, diversity of, the generations that are in the workplace or even out of the workplace. They're there. And how do we communicate with them in a respectful manner, but also in a way that, one doesn't feel that you have to lose yourself in a bid to satisfy the next generation. Now, what are some personal habits or practices that help leaders stay connected to their people as humans and not just resources? Let me just repeat that. What are some personal habits or practices that help leaders stay connected to their people as humans and not just resources? And you've already alluded to those. For example, taking note of your direct report, your colleague, if they're going through something, putting that into mind. It could be they are going through the event themselves, or maybe a loved one, and following up with that and asking them, how are they doing? How are you doing? Taking interest in the person and not just the role that they do. understanding some of the interests they have. Maybe they like to play chess, maybe they like to play football. It could be simple things that the person will say, oh, Rosalind may be my boss, but she knows that, I have an interest in XYZ. It could be also something as simple as knowing someone's name, because there are very many offices that people, you're a new person and someone cannot be bothered to learn your name. Someone can even go ahead and give you a nickname just for the sake of it, but they don't have the, the decency to actually just learn your name. To me, such as the things that, it makes someone feel that you're just another number, you're just another statistic within the organization. It doesn't mean that in an organization of 1,000 plus people, you will know everyone. But when you're interacting with someone, just take a moment to actually know what's your name. And for that period, just keep that in mind. What would you share, Joyce?
You know, Rosalind, what you have just said, it's not hypothetical. It's real. I
Mhm.
once had a boss who, at that time, I worked in finance, and this boss, it was an organization who were not. I think we were not too many, and I say not too many. The team might have been maybe 30, or yeah, let's put it at about 30.
Mhm.
But this boss used to refer to me as that lady in accounts or in finance,
Oh no.
and we worked together for a number of years.
Wow.
And I went away feeling that this boss does not, I mean, to the names are not important. And it wasn't just me, even for the other staff. He would, I think he knew the names. At least he used to call very few people by name, but he would refer to us by the functions. And
Oh,
so at that point, I felt like I'm just one of the cogs in a wheel, for lack of a better word.
yeah.
And it doesn't take too much to learn people's names, learn the names of people's spouses or their boyfriends or girlfriends. And you don't have to, because again, when you have the conversations, you get to know what works for one person and not for the other. Because again, for someone else, they might find that intrusive. Why are you asking me about my boyfriend or my girlfriend? So it's
Yeah.
getting to know, when you're having those conversations and connecting with people as humans, it's getting to know the wiring of different people. It's not to try and figure them out, but at least get to know what is important for so and so. Maybe this lady in marketing, she has a dream of owning her company at one time. And yes, granted, she's working for this organization right now, but she has dreams of moving on and starting her own business. Even talking about that, because then you're humanizing and you are connecting with people where they are. As you listen to them, as getting to know about them, you mentioned, the bit about sports and hobbies. Maybe getting to know, oh, maybe Steven likes movies, and so when he's done an excellent job, one of the rewards that we can give is give him a ticket, an open ticket to a movie of his choice. Maybe Pamela loves flowers. So again, when she has performed, giving her a bouquet of flowers. There's one time, one of the bosses that I worked with, I had just put together my first set of board reports. So this was the first time that I was preparing account, the statements for a board meeting. And I worked for many hours to put that report together, even worked into lunchtime, and then I took my lunch break. When I came back, I found there was a glass of freshly. squeezed juice. I don't even know where he got it from, but there was a glass of freshly squeezed juice. I mean, it was such a small gesture, but I remember it to this day. It was like, wow, this is, it felt so refreshing, and it was such an unexpected surprise. So, spending time with people and just trying out different things again, from my reaction, because I believe, I don't remember now, but I believe I went and told my boss how appreciative I was. If I had, depending on the feedback that I had given this boss, then they would have known, oh, a glass of juice is not the thing to give Joyce, or a glass of juice is very welcome. And so they would try something, maybe something different next time. And so coming up with creative ways of appreciating yourself or your team, but that still boils down to getting to know them at a personal level. And you will get to know them at a personal level when you have those conversations. It doesn't have to be an intrusion. Just the other day, one of the there's an executive I'm coaching right now, and she told me one of the, because she has just taken up the assignment, and one of the things on her for the coming quarter, one of the things that she's planning to do is to be taking her team members out for coffee just to connect with them, because she's new on the job and some of the team members are also new, and she felt that this is a way to just getting to know them. So it all varies from situation to situation. Sometimes you will do something and realize, oh, this did not land well. But when people read your heart and the way that you're relating with them, they know that you meant well. And again, that comes with having a track record and doing this over a period of time. Then it becomes easier to try different things and see what works for who, and and keep building it. So it's I think of it as taking a journey. So you take the one step, you get better as you go along, you get better at reading people, you read articles, you watch videos and get to know these are different things that I can do with my team members. So also opening up to yourself to being to learning and improving over time. Back to you, Rosaline.
I couldn't agree more, Joyce. And I think to add on to what you've said, the value of consistency. A lot of
Mhm,
team members could be suffering from trauma.
mhm,
Maybe their former boss was an absolute tyrant. Then
mhm,
you're coming in and you have a different agenda. They'll be very skeptical about it. But if you are consistent in what you do, consistent in your messaging, consistent in your actions, then you break down those barriers and it becomes easier for people to trust you. Because as you build trust on a personal level, you also need to build trust on a team level. Every stakeholder has their own demands. So how you manage from one to the next is the dance that you have to take.
mhm,
The
mhm,
speed, the style, everything will vary, but it's that consistent nature when delivering that to the team or to the individual that will resonate or fail to resonate with them, and hopefully they will have that avenue to which they can communicate and provide feedback.
mhm,
If I may read input that has come through, John, you say, to me, I would say managing with empathy is not about being soft or lowering standards. It's the strategic intelligence required to unlock our team's full potential, foster innovation, and build unwavering loyalty. Very well put, John. Couldn't agree more.
mhm,
There is beauty, sometimes people think that the simplest of things do not provide for big returns. But human beings are very simple. When you treat them with respect, when you build the trust, when you create that openness, they will be more than willing to do more and more and deliver. And yes, It's not about lowering standard actually. Leading with empathy, you are putting new standards and challenging norms and status quo. So, John, thank you so much for that feedback. Joyce, do you have any commentary to make towards that?
I I totally agree with John that leading with empathy is not about, it's not about being soft, it's not about being weak, it's not about fluff, but it is strategic intent. Realizing or acknowledging that yes, these resources, they are human, and with all the different layers, with their complexities, and with the different way in which they'll show up, knowing that yes, we need to take them as a whole person, because you're dealing, yes, with a whole person, and from day to day that may look different, but you're intentional. And I love also the word that you have used, you're consistent. So you're intentional and you're also consistent. So it's taking small steps. You start a bit at a time and then keep building from one to the other until you're able to build, 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 um, build a track record where people know they can count on you. And even when you make the mistake, because that is bound to happen at some point, then it's not the make or break. People give you a second chance. So there's trust that has been built on the team. So yes, I
Brilliant.
totally agree with that.
As we come to almost the close of the session, second last question for me is: as the future of work evolves, remote, hybrid, AI, why will empathy matter even more now and the future? Why does empathy matter even more?
AI is true, has increasingly continued to change the way that we work, change the way that we relate, and change a lot of things. And I I can only no, it's actually hard to imagine what even next year is going to be like with AI. Uh, those changes that are taking place, and so many shifts that are taking place. I want to paint a picture. Imagine, imagine there's an organization that decides to automate the empathy aspect of the empathy function, if we may refer to it as that. And so it's when you need, say, a listening ear, or when you have when you're something, you're processing things, you log into a system and AI responds to you. And I want you to imagine, Rosalind, if the AI or an AI chatbot is the one that you're having a conversation with you, and the AI chatbot, after you've said a number of things, responds to you, we care. How believable is that? And how personal does it feel that it's an AI chatbot telling you, we care about what you're going through, maybe about the assignment that you're working on, and you know that this is automated? Would you really feel cared for? And I'd love to hear maybe one or two people from the audience, just how personal does it feel to have an AI chatbot telling you, we care? Let's see if there's any reaction. If not, Rosalind, you can tell me what your reaction to that would be.
I would have a very hard time accepting that we care because there isn't human to it. To me, it feels like, it's a code. When XYZ prompts come through, this is the result you provide. There are things, personally, I believe they cannot be delegated. And in as much as AI is here to stay, and yes, it's going to respond in a certain manner, we also know that the same AI has also resulted into unfortunate situations. And for me, empathy is, it's like it's designated to humans, that personal, one-on-one feel, one-on-one touch. I think it cannot be replaced by technology. That's my personal and humble opinion. I stand to be corrected.
Mhm. And I do agree with you that yes, there's the place for AI, and we must embrace it. That's a way to go. Otherwise, then we'll find ourselves extinct, whether it's in terms of our businesses or whatever it is that we are delivering, the services and products that we're offering. But even as those developments continue, then we must not lose the human touch, because the human touch is it's personal, it's human, and it touches at the core of who we are. If I may quote, we do know the Gen Zs, as they are coming into the workplace, they are the generation that were born with tech, at their fingertips. And so tech is part and parcel of them. And yet, studies have shown that the lonely generation, they have mental health issues. They have more of those than, say, others who have gone before, where the human connection is has been brilliant, building that relationships. And they are in a crowd. And I'm thinking here of a digital crowd. So there are many people around, and there's so much interconnectedness, and yet there's still so much loneliness, mental health issues, stress. Of course, there are many factors that come into play, including the economies and the wars, and just too much happening in all the time. And yet, with that, even with that digital connection, there's still the craving for the human touch, and for someone having a conversation, someone looking into your eyes, maybe someone putting a hand on your shoulders, not even saying anything, but in the way they look at you, in the way they put a hand on your shoulder, if it's appropriate, of course, because again, we don't want to start a whole
No,
different,
Safra, yeah.
yes, but that alone, someone gets a message. I hear you, I see you, I care about what is going on in your life and about what you're going through. That, Rosaline, cannot be automated. And so
Absolutely.
it's, yes, bringing the two together.
Well, you have a response to your question. Asha says, very impersonal. A robotic voice or chat saying we care feels like a cartoon book where thoughts are expressed in bubbles.
Mhm.
Very well and interestingly put there, Asha. Thank you so much for that. I think my final question in this very, very, engaging conversation is, if there is one takeaway for leaders listening today or anyone joining us today, what would you want them to do differently tomorrow to lead humans and not just teams?
Before I answer that, I want to share a quote, and it's a quote that many of us are familiar with, by Maya Angelou, that people will forget what you said, people will forget what you did, but people will never forget
How
how
you
you can even complete that.
how you made them feel.
Absolutely. And therefore, even as we show up in our workplaces, as we show up in our businesses, as we show up for our families and loved ones, ones we are living with and interacting with on a personal, at a very personal level. It's remembering that we are dealing with humans. Again, tying back to the topic for this webinar, managing humans, not just teams. And people are people are
Okay.
people. They have a human element and they need a human touch. And recognizing that in the conversation that someone will have tomorrow, maybe even tonight, in that conversation, in the way that we respond, is that when we connect fast at the heart level before making demands of the performance, which are important, but we truly need to connect fast. Because then, with that connection, people will feel cared for. And so, look for ways of creating that environment, model it as a team leader, and genuinely express that care, being very, very consistent. Again, to borrow from what you said, it doesn't have to be big steps. You just make a step at a time, knowing that sometimes you will make mistakes. But when you genuinely are connecting with people, not because you want to gather information to manipulate or to use against them, but because you're caring for them as humans. At the end of the day, you're going to see the impact on your bottom line. Whether it's a profit making organization, if it's not, then the impact that you're going to have over time will show up because of the way that you treat your people.
Thank you so much, Joyce, for that. I think it's important we understand that in as much as technology is here and technology advancement is happening with every passing minute, second, you name it. At the end of the day, even that technology has been created by a human being. And as human beings, we need to connect with each other with grace. Everyone has a story. Everyone, behind a certain smile, behind a certain face, there's a story that you might not be aware of. And therefore, be careful, be kind to the next person because you really do not know their story. And at the end of the day, even if you knew their story, how would you want someone to communicate or interact with you? So, for example, maybe someone is going through a sad time, or it could be something as simple as think people will start planning for end of year parties now. You could be that HR person that will take the time to know allergies, preferences, and not just taking people to a certain place because that's where there is the loudest music, etc. But you will find people not having a meal because of diet restrictions or allergies, etc. It can be something as simple as that, or even whatever is served in your office. Try and cater for everyone without burning your books. You really don't have to do big fluffy stuff. It's the simple things in life that have the biggest impact. And with that, Joyce, I cannot thank you enough for joining us in this conversation. Managing with empathy, leading humans, not just teams. I think it's a conversation that people need to have every so often. And the importance of understanding that empathy is not a sign of weakness. And it is not just any other skill, it is a critical skill that each and every one of us needs to embrace and needs to grow. And we grow this skill As you pour yourself out for others, don't forget to pour into yourself. Okay, don't go suffering burnout because you are trying to, fight all the wars. No. Empathy, the brother of empathy is accountability. So the two go hand in hand. Having difficult conversations go hand in hand. So be gracious to yourself, be gracious to others, and let's make the world a better place by practicing empathy. Any final words from you, Joyce?
It's to say that empathy or leading with empathy is everyone's business. From the top all the way to the bottom, there's something that we can do as team leaders, as peers, as the employees, because again, we can extend empathy to our leaders. We can show empathy. So I don't know whether to call it reverse empathy, but well, we can lead up with empathy. So empathy is everyone's business, and there's absolutely something that each one of us can do every day to become better leaders and to create better environments so that we allow people to show up as people. Because when they are given that space to be themselves, then they are going to perform at their best. And therefore, leading with empathy will improve performance, it will improve innovation, it will improve morale, it will improve engagement, and it becomes a win for everyone. Thank you for having me. It's been my pleasure to engage in this conversation, a
Thank
conversation worth having.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Asante Sana Joyce. And thank you very much to everyone that joined us via LinkedIn and also via YouTube. I am more than humbled by your patronage with every, passing session that we have. Thank you so much, Joyce. Your time and insights are greatly, greatly valued. And I hope for everyone that joined, they have enjoyed the session and walked away having learned the value of empathy and how we can apply that in our everyday lives. I thank you all for your time. I thank you all for joining this session of Unplugged with Ross, and I look forward to seeing you in the next session. Thank you very much and have yourselves a good night.